Parry from EQUITY.GURU here for the latest in our Gauntlet series. I'm talking to Ken D'Entremont from Medexus Pharmaceuticals. MDP is the ticker symbol. Ken, you've been through some things the last few days.
We sure have, Chris. Thanks for having me on this program to talk about them.
I guess the too long didn't read is you guys had a delay on one of your products going through an FDA approval process. I think from what I can gather, it's maybe a couple of months. It adds to the delay, but it's not a no. It's not a this thing ain't going to happen. It's a, do you have an answer to this question? You do? Okay, great. Add that to your form.
Yeah, I think that's the important take on it. That look, the agency could have just said no, go away, and come back with a new study. That's not what they've said. It continues to be an active review. They haven't set a deadline, so the sponsor has time. Medac, our partner, has time to collect the information that the agency is asking for and submit it. And based on that, the agency will then go forward and make a decision on the file. So we're super disappointed with the delay, but it continues forward. It again is just a delay. This is not a decision by any stretch.
So just the pure numbers of things, correct me if I'm wrong here, but your last quarter you did 22 million US in revenue, which projects out at
23. Yeah, 23. Yeah.
You're projecting out at about 90 million US just if you do the same quarter to quarter. Your market cap was $20 million this morning at the start of trading. Yeah. Canadian, even.
Yeah, Canadian. No, exactly. And the Canadian dollar is heading in the wrong direction. So. Right. Yeah, well, revenue, this morning we said, revenue is trending over 100 million US, and that's based on the fact that, this is now going to be 4 quarters where we've exceeded 20 million. Last quarter was 23 million US. And we just said that we're certain to set a new record this quarter. It's our previous best was 24.3. And we've already surpassed that partway through the quarter. So clearly this is going to be another really strong quarter, and we'll beat that EBITDA mark that we set last quarter at 1.9. We'll be better than that, which starts to produce a free cash flow.
So you're trading at currently 0.25 revenues, annual revenues.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. I would challenge everybody to find a comparable company that produces positive EBITDA,
right?
Has the type of growth potential we have, has a track record we have. Remember, we've got 44% compound annual growth rate over the last 4 or 5 years.
Right. Well, you've got enough products there that if you set treosulfan on fire and never looked at it again, it's still you're undervalued by a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, you think of our top 4 products, so EQUITY growing very strongly. That's the reason for the recent growth. We've just added Gauntlet, which we have said publicly is at least $16 million US per year, and we think we can grow that. Right. Rasuvo is doing record demand every quarter. Last quarter, record demand. And Rupall, our 4th largest product, is 30% growth, annual MAT growth, 5 years after we've launched it. So we've got a fantastic, history of growth and good prospects going forward.
And now you've also added Gauntlet to the mix, which hasn't factored into the financials yet.
Correct. Yeah. And I think in the statement we put out on Monday, we said that, look, September is the first month where we will book full revenue. And so that can't help but, increase our quarterly revenue, just that alone. Plus the fact we've got these other products that are growing.
I know from, being around the traps for a while that when individuals are looking to buy a company, that the general guideline is 4 times annual revenue. That would put you at a $400 million market cap, just as things stand right now. And you're 5% of that.
Well, there are many comparables. If you look around, our space, there's lots of comparables that trade in that range, we don't see any reason why with the base business that we have that we should be way down here. And so that creates a buying opportunity for investors, and clearly insiders have been buying. I think if you check the CDI, you'll see the insiders have been buying, which clearly is an indication that, at least management thinks, there's great prospects for growth here.
You're not running out of runway. You've got cash in the bank.
Correct. Yeah. So our cash balance has been, pretty steady for the last 3 or 4 quarters. And now as EBITDA grows, free cash flow grows, that gets better as we go forward.
Now, let's talk for a second about what happens when treosulfan does get approved, assuming it does. A lot of FDA approvals, once they happen, you've got to kick in a massive sales network and marketing campaigns. And if you don't have the millions of dollars to do it, then the FDA approval means nothing. As I understand it, treosulfan, the target audience is pretty small. Like, obviously it costs a lot per dose, but you're not going out there and having to talk to 250,000 doctors.
No, we're talking to 140 institutions that do transplants. And so, part of that sales force is already built for glial land because, glioblastoma tumor resection is done in many of the same hospitals. So we already have people in those hospitals. So, assuming it gets approved, we would add 8 more reps. So that's not a massive lift. It's pretty small.
That's adding an EQUITY.GURU sized lineup to your company. It's
Do any of you guys have experience in stem cell transplant?
not as much as I'd like.
Okay.
We'll work on it though. We'll watch some tutorials. Ken, I guess as a public company CEO, sometimes the markets don't make a lot of sense. And this is honestly one of those times that people see, oh, there's a delay in FDA, sell. That's, they read it as rejection. And you've been through that a couple of times already before, right? The stock chart of Medexus is generally up, except for those times where you've had FDA delays, and then it's shredded. Like, is it just a fact of the Canadian biotech and medical tech landscape that people just don't really read past the first 2 or 3 lines?
Yeah, no, I think you've hit it head on. Small cap companies like ours. I mean, look, we are 100 million, but we're still considered a small cap issuer. When you have bad news, people panic. But look, we've been through this before. We've already got a strong base of business. We're not going anywhere. So typically what happens, it's really bad news. Everybody sells off. Then everybody recognizes, gee, there's a nice, strong underlying business here. And then the thing, grows back up. And so we expect the same thing will happen again. And clearly, this quarter that we're working on, we'll be really anxious to get that news out there and tell people this is the progress that we're seeing in our core business.
Do you expect the next round of financials to be business as usual or interesting?
No, I think we've already publicly said that, look, we are expecting records. And so, we said this morning and put that out that our previous high water mark was $24.3 million in revenue, US. We've already exceeded that. So we're going to come in with a really strong quarter, exceed last quarter's EBITDA, which was 1.9. And then I think investors will clearly see, okay, that underlying business is really strong. And I just want to reinforce, this will be the 4th quarter of revenue over $20 million. And this quarter revenue is going to be significantly over $20 million.
So even at $20 million, you're undervalued. I imagine that there's going to be a real sort of slingshot effect on the share chart here once people actually start reading the numbers and figuring out what's on offer. Do you have, other than the financials and the whatever happens with treosulfan, do you have other news that's entering the cycle in the next few months?
No, I think the results will be the next thing because they're so close at hand. We're always looking for new opportunities, new business development opportunities. So perhaps something happens there. But I think, the next piece of news is, look for this quarter. We may well put some information out on revenue shortly after the quarter, just so people get some sense of where we're going to come in, and then report the full financials. It would be mid-November.
I would imagine some of your products it'd be seasonal in terms of revenue numbers, that they go up, they go down, but the stability of 4 quarters of 20 million plus is pretty notable there. It's not like there's a high element of risk that one day we're going to wake up and find that your revenue is not going where it should be, or that your products don't work anymore. I think everyone worries about what might happen with an FDA process just as a design, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm going out buying MDP this morning. I just think this is one of those Moneyball situations where the market has dismissed without really looking. And at some point, there's going to be a repricing that's going to be kind of savage.
Yeah, I would think so. And I also want to point out that, look, the delay is terribly aggravating. We're disappointed, as everybody is, but it doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
All of the costs associated with this delay is on our partner, Medac, who is the sponsor of the application. So it doesn't cost us anything. So we focus on our core business. We keep growing it. And people will then value us on that, I hope. Plus the fact that you've got this option on Trio, so at some point there will be a decision on Trio. If it's positive, boy, that'd be a nice option to have.
Normally, I guess in these processes, like the big question is, will it be approved? And with treosulfan, it's already been approved almost everywhere, right? It's like, this isn't a case of does it work, does it kill people? It's a case of crossing the T's, dotting the I's, filling in the forms, refilling in the forms, refilling in the forms, and eventually, you would imagine that short of the FDA discovering something that no one else has discovered around the world where it's already approved, that it's going to be approved.
Yeah, and it's throughout Western Europe, it has been approved, and it's performing well, and it's been safe. So those are all very important factors. We did the registration ourselves in Canada. The Canadian authority, basically on the same file, did an expedited review, fast-tracked it. It was complete in 6 months, on the market. It's performing well, and physicians are using the product. So no, concerns, adverse effects, or anything. So the FDA is really just, doing what they're responsible for,
right.
Assuring that the product is, first of all, safe, and then secondly, it's effective. And then hopefully, once they have all the information they request, they'll come to a conclusion, a decision, and we hope it's positive.
Is there, if you had your time over again, would there have been anything that you would have done differently in this process?
If you go back to it, the very beginning, I wish we would have had more time to launch the first time around. We licensed it in February. It was due for a decision in August. And so that was a really quick ramp up to get ready for commercialization. So obviously we spent money there. Had we had any, expectation that the process had been dragged out, we would have spread that spending over a much longer period of time. So when people look back at our historical revenues and EBITDA, that dip you see is just because we had to spend everything in a very short period of time to get ready. Right. Had we stretched it over, what's turned into 18 months, you barely would have noticed it.
Got it. So right now it's onward and upward. I guess the focus is on making sure people understand what they're looking at when they look at Medexus, understanding all those products that you have underneath treosulfan that are doing numbers right now, figuring out what Gleolan's going to have as a positive impact on top of that. Like, if people came to the story today, despite what's happened previously, like today is a really strong day to be looking at Medexus Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, there's nothing but upside from here. So people new to the story, this is a great investment thesis. You can see the potential in the business.
Well, I got to let you go because I got to go buy some stock.
It was nice talking to you, Chris.
Thanks, Ken. Always a pleasure. That's MDP, Medexus Pharmaceuticals.